Movie Reviews. Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker, Episode 9, the conclusion to the Skywalker saga. This movie, I don't even know how to review it right now. So I'm going to say pretty spoiler-free, just based off of just the details you see in the trailers. If you don't want any spoilers, I would suggest don't even watch this review. But again, I'm going to keep it spoiler-free for at least the first half of this review. The reason that I'm going to be talking about spoilers at the end of this review is because it's really hard to talk about this movie without going into spoilers. Overall, my thoughts on this movie are still very confused, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to give it a score yet because I'm still trying to process everything that I just saw. But I will say there's a lot that I like in this movie. There's also a lot that I hate in this movie. Essentially, where we are in this movie is you have Kylo Ren, who is off in space trying to do this thing. You have Rey and the Rebellion also trying to stop him, I suppose. And then, again, this is from the trailer, so it's not really a spoiler. The Emperor is back. So I think the biggest problem I have with this movie is that I wish they would have planned out this trilogy. I'm going to do my best to not compare this to The Last Jedi, not compare this to The Force Awakens, but it's going to be really hard to because this movie is trying so hard to erase what has already been done and set up in those movies. Last Jedi conversation is getting very old for me, but this movie is so obviously trying to redo everything that they did in that movie. It's almost as if J.J. Abrams and Rian Johnson are openly just fighting and arguing, saying, Star Wars is this, Star Wars is that. I want to go this way. No, I want to go this way. And the dialogue and the imagery and everything in this movie is simply trying to argue, no. That wasn't Star Wars. This is Star Wars. I'm already seeing the divide once again, where it's like, if you loved The Last Jedi, you don't like this one as much, and if you hated The Last Jedi, you love this movie, and it's just very frustrating, because I wish they would have just picked a side and stuck to it, because The Force Awakens kind of is like, we're introducing all these things. The Last Jedi is like, no, we're going to go this direction. And now The Rise of Skywalker is like, nope, we're going back to the start. And so what we have had now is 3 movies of introducing new concepts, new ideas, new plots. The problem is, with this movie, it introduces new things and it also tries to conclude it in the same movie, which is just a mess. You can't really blame J.J. Abrams from having to do this because he got this movie with a whole mess of angry fans, Star Wars people just complaining about The Last Jedi, and you can't even blame Rian Johnson because people signed off on what he did. It's not like he went behind their backs and made this movie and made all these decisions. There were so many people in place saying like, yeah, okay, we approve you doing this with these characters. So if for whatever reason you have an issue with any one of these movies, you need to complain to the people who let all this happen and did not come in with a set plan of where they were going in this trilogy. I will say I'm a very casual Star Wars fan. I didn't grow up with them and didn't fall in love with like a lot of people did. I really enjoy the movies. It's hard to like movies and not like Star Wars, so I do enjoy it. I'm just not the biggest fan ever. So not being a huge Star Wars fan, I can see that if you are, this movie's going to appeal because it pulls from literally every other of the 8 episodes and bringing all these different characters and things into it, and it makes you feel nostalgic towards those things. As a movie, like I said, it's messy, but it's also just kind of boring. The thing that's so fun about Star Wars is it can be colorful, it can be interesting with what it's doing with the characters, the locations, the planets, and this movie just kind of does a lot of stuff that we've already seen before. Specifically when it comes to plans and locations, yes, there's new places that they go that we haven't been in other Star Wars movies, but it really just looks like places we've already been before, and there's not really any new concepts or ideas. Now, something I did enjoy about the movie is there were ideas around the Force that were improved in this movie, and just very new concepts that were really interesting to watch. Kind of took the Force to this next level and introduced some new powers, I guess you could say, that come with it, and characters discovering these powers, and it was something that we've never seen before, so for that, I was like, that's cool. I want to see more about this. As far as character goes, I mean, you know, I do enjoy the characters that we've seen in this trilogy. Kylo Ren is a fantastic character. I felt like he got robbed in this movie, though. It kind of explores a little bit more about his past and kind of how he's dealing with the light side and the dark side, and what does he do with his parents being Han and Leia. But for the most part, I felt like there was so much more they could have done with this character. Rey is a fantastic Jedi. She is great in the action scenes and the emotional scenes, so I don't really have a lot to complain about her within this movie. Now, there are some spoiler things that I do have issue with that I'll talk about, but for the most part, she's great. The rest of her friends, though, I really could care less. Poe, Finn, even Chewbacca doesn't really have a lot to do. Like, everyone's kind of working together in this movie, which is a lot different than other Star Wars movies, because other Star Wars movies, you kind of have a character going to this planet to do this thing. You have a character going to this planet to do this thing. In this movie, they're all together, working together on the same goal, and, you know, it's fine, I guess, but there's not really, like, a lot of chemistry between the characters, so, like, I don't care about Poe or Finn at all. And then you got the return of Lando, and of course Leia's back in it. And Leia is kind of hard to talk about because with the death of Carrie Fisher, I know it made the writing of this character a little difficult because she was supposed to have a much bigger role within this movie, and she kind of really doesn't do a whole lot. So I feel like what they did was appropriate. It's just unfortunate because I think there could have been a lot more potential with her character. But with Lando, it's great to see him. He doesn't really do like a whole lot. Again, I feel like they kind of pull him in just to be like nostalgic and like look at him, which I'm glad they did, but I think there could have been more use for him. But overall, again, if you're a Star Wars fan, you're probably going to enjoy this movie. I know, like, I had a fun time watching it. It's just like when you walk out and you actually think about what happened, it was like that didn't really feel like a conclusion. Take Avengers Endgame, for example. When you walked out of that movie, it was like, this is the end of this era. The Infinity Saga is complete. These characters are wrapped up. And with the Star Wars movie, you don't really feel like that. The thing that is wrapped up is this concept that's introduced in this movie. And I wish they would have introduced this concept in The Force Awakens. Like, you had 3 movies to build up this hype, and you failed to do that. Instead, you had to build this hype in the last hour of the movie and say, how are they gonna figure this out? And it's like, I don't know, because you literally just created this problem that they had to figure out. There were so many better ways you could have wrapped this up, showed honor to previous Jedis, but instead, it was just this messy situation that they were trying to fix. Like I said, I'm going to hold back on a rating right now. Honestly, I'm leaning towards like mid-upper 60s. It could break 70 if I really think about it, but I haven't been convinced yet. So if you want to stay tuned for spoilers, here they come. If not, turn this video off, go watch this movie, and come back later for the rest of my thoughts. That was your morning. We're getting into spoilers. First of all, the biggest plot twist, I think, in this movie is that Rey is the grandchild of Emperor Palpatine. Rey Palpatine. I hate that. Here's why I hate it. And not only because The Last Jedi kind of said, like, she's nobody, and now J.J. Abrams is like, just kidding, she was always somebody, screw you, Rian Johnson. The reason I hate it is because the message in The Last Jedi was so strong that anybody can be the hero. That was the whole thing with Broom Boy at the last scene, right? Like, people have the Force. Finn is Force sensitive. You don't have to be bloodline in order to have Force powers, but then they're like, nope, forget that. The only reason she's powerful is because of who she's related to. For us normal people, it's like, great, cool, I guess we can't be powerful. Other thing is that Kylo is actually related to powerful people, and they kind of just don't even like really use him. He could have been the big villain in this movie, but instead they're like, no, Snoke's dead, so we need to make a new villain. Let's bring the Emperor back. Kylo, you're not good enough. He was hardly the villain. The villain the whole time was the Emperor, and Kylo's just like chasing Rey the whole time, and he has like not a lot to do. Also, the kiss between Kylo and Rey at the end was so forced, so ridiculous. There was no sexual tension between them at all, and I don't care if you thought there was. That's just fan fiction that people made up on the internet because it's like, oh, look, they have this little bond between each other. Like, people can be connected through the Force without having sexual tension between them. Speaking of sexual tension, what is up with Lando and his possible daughter? When I was watching that, I was like, please do not make this his daughter, because they were hinting at this whole time, like, who are your parents? And then he says, like, oh, let's find out who they are. Why is that scene necessary? Here's the other problem I have with the whole Rey being related, because everyone is related to everyone in the Star Wars universe. That was a very cool plot twist in episode 5 when Darth Vader was Luke's father. Nobody saw it coming, and then the problem is they just kept doing that over and over and over again. Even the surprise twist of Luke and Leia being related in episode 6, like, sure, that makes sense. That's pretty cool. Add to the family dynamic. And then they're like, wait a minute, where did Boba Fett come from? We gotta give him a dad. They're like, wait a minute, Kylo Ren, he can't just be a villain. He needs to be related to someone. How about Han and Leia? And so every Star Wars fan is like, well, this is Star Wars, so Rey simply can't be a powerful person. She must be the daughter of someone. I honestly think that's a J.J. Abrams problem, because Lost does the same thing throughout the entire show. It started off being a show where people were just kind of there randomly and they're figuring out like, wow, like we're sharing this experience together. And then by the last season, you found out everyone was related and that they were all chosen to be there, and it was intentional. There was nothing ordinary about them. Only if you are born a special person do you get to do special things in this life, and that's what this movie and Lost taught us. Honestly, more than all of that, I felt like this movie was just too safe. This movie was safe in the sense where other movies took chances. They introduced new characters, new worlds, new concepts, and this movie kind of just did what we have already seen. Think of it. The end of the prequel trilogy ended with the Emperor. The end of the original trilogy ended with the Emperor. This one, why wouldn't we do the same exact thing? You had so many chances to create cool things. You introduced this idea that like Leia was trained to be a Jedi. Cool. That's awesome. I like that. Why didn't you introduce that in episode 7? Why is it just now that we're seeing the Emperor for the first time? Why couldn't there be hints of him throughout the other 2 movies? 2 reasons. Because you played it safe and there was no plan for this trilogy. Again, I know I'm being very negative about these spoilers because overall the movie is like fun to watch, and when you're hearing the voices of the Jedis and the Sith, you're like, oh, this is cool. You're hearing John Williams music kind of like referencing all the other movies, and you're like, this is amazing. But at the same time, you just had to like open your eyes and be like, okay, you're just trying to appeal to my emotions because you know this is not a great film. So that's some quick, very quick spoiler reactions. I might have to upload a video after I see this movie again because there's a lot more thoughts coming to my mind. This is very fresh viewing of this movie, but I probably like this a lot more than I'm letting off right now. More than anything, for the time being, I need a break from Star Wars because just this online debate already is starting to stress me out. I think I need to go watch Cats and get my mind on something else. But hey, let me know your thoughts below. What did you think of this movie? Did you like it? Did you dislike it? Where does this fall in the rankings of the whole Star Wars saga? Don't forget to like and subscribe for more content like this, and I will see you next time.